So through this course, we're going to learn how to program one of these little robots using Java. We're not going to become absolute experts through this course on Java, but we are going to play with robots, so you get some experience with that, and we are going to play with Java, so you get kind of a nice gentle introduction into Java, which you could then pursue Java a little bit further on later if you wanted to, and you have kind of a decent base, so you won't feel maybe as lost, depending on what resources you're looking at later on. So, it might help gradually introduce you to Java if that's something you're interested in learning more about. Now, we could just jump right into working with the robot, but that's several layers of complexity because you're having to deal with Java, which we haven't talked really about yet. You're having to deal with the robot. You're having to deal with the robot's firmware. You're having to deal with connecting the robot to the computer. So there's a lot of extra steps there. So before we do that, let's make sure that we know how to just run any program in Java just to begin with. Now, I'm on a Mac, and depending on what you're on, this might be a little different, but let's just assume that you're using the same machine I am. If you're not, you might have to look up some other stuff on how to run it on your machine, but this is what I have, so this is what I'm working with. So we're going to run Java just through what comes with the machine itself. Later on, we'll use an IDE that will help us out, but for now, we're just going to start just with what your machine comes with. So if we go to Launchpad, the program we want is called TextEdit. Mine's under Other, but if you can't find it, you can always use your search function up here. So TextEdit. Now this is how mine looks. This is in plain text mode, but yours might not look this way. Yours might have some stuff up top where you can change the font and some of that stuff. And that's a nice feature, but we don't want that. That's going to cause issues because all of that is extra coding in the file that's telling it what font to use, what style, how large the font should be, all of that stuff. That's extra content. And even though you can't see the code, it's still there. So we need to get rid of that. So if you go to Preferences, this is what yours should look like. And you want to make sure this looks like this. So if you haven't used TextEdit for coding, yours probably looks something a little bit more, I don't know, like that. And if I quit TextEdit and I reopen it, let's see, there, like this is probably what yours looks like. So if I go to Preferences, once again, I can take all of these things off. So I want plain text, I want to get rid of all of this stuff, all these little check marks, make them go away. I want to go to Open and Save. That's fine. We want to make sure that this is not marked because it might try to override your file type. If you're writing a Java file and you forget the extension, it might make it a text automatically, and that might throw you off. This other stuff looks pretty good. Should be fine. So we'll go ahead and close this. Nothing has changed here, right? So the preferences that we just set, they only run when you first open TextEdit. So we need to quit TextEdit, and now we can relaunch it, and there you go. It should look like this. If I want to make my text a little bigger, I can do Command plus to zoom in. It's not changing the code that's used to create this. It's not changing the document itself. It's just zooming in. So this will make it easier for you to see what I'm doing. You could do it on yours as well without actually putting any extra code in there to make the font bigger or smaller. If you want to change your font and some of those options, you do have some options here, and that affects the preferences for TextEdit itself, not the actual file you're working on, so that's safe to do. Alright, so now let's actually write a little Java program. If you've done Python or you've done some of the more modern languages, programming can be pretty easy, but Java is a little bit more archaic in the way it was designed. It's designed a little bit closer to C. And so there's some stuff in here that I don't want to get into a whole lot yet. We'll talk more about it later. But you're going to have to follow along and put the same exact letters, or you might have some trouble. So we're going to start with public, class, and hello world, and open curly brace. So we've created a class, it's public, and we've called it hello world. whatever we call this here is going to have to match what we end up saving our file name as. So that's important. If you end up changing this or you end up changing the file name, it won't work. This actually doesn't really matter. You could call it whatever you want as long as the file name matches what you've called it. Just going to do a line break, just going to hit return. I'm going to do a tab just for some space. And public static void. And we're defining the main here, so whatever's the main is going to be the main thing that runs. We're going to write string. Notice I've capitalized that. Args, which is short for arguments. Some square braces here. Close parentheses, so we've closed this parenthesis that we've opened there. And we're going to use another curly brace. I'm going to use two indentions now. I indented this one because this is inside of this curly brace. Now that I have another curly brace, I'm going to have an additional indentation. And this is going to be system.out.print ln for line, in parentheses, hello world, exclamation point. Close the quotation marks here, close the parentheses here, and a semicolon. So what I've just done here is I've told Java that I want to print something. I want to print a line, and that line is going to be hello world. It's going to be a string of characters. This is called a string. And a string is just letters, which could include numbers, but not numbers in the sense of like one is one thing, just one in the sense of like the character that represents one. The computer doesn't know what hello means. The computer doesn't care what hello means. It just knows that this is an H, an E, an L, an L, an O, a space, etc. If I were to type 34 here, the computer isn't thinking 34 like the number. It's just thinking like the character of a 3, this 3 looking thing here, and the character that looks like a 4. It doesn't know what 34 means when I put these quotes around it. It's just those characters. So hello world. I've closed the double quotes to finish the string. I've closed the parentheses. And I've used a semicolon to like end the line. That's sort of like the punctuation, like the period. I'm going to press enter, tab, because I'm still inside of this curly brace, and I'm going to close this curly brace. So now this curly brace completes that one. Since this is closing that block, it's no longer really inside of it, so I'm gonna just use one indentation. So this is like the end of that, so they match up on the same line. Press enter, do one more curly brace. I would normally indent it, but since this is ending this line here, I'm not going to indent it. So this kind of helps keep it visually organized. We can kind of tell what is associated with what is inside of what by these indentions. Do you have to have them? No, but you should. It's good form. So this is our first program. If everything works properly, it should print this, and that's it. That's all it should do. So let's try it. So I'm going to save it. I'm just going to save it on my desktop, but you can save it where you would like. So I need to call it hello world and .java. And I have to call it hello world because that's what I wrote here. If I typo here, then I need to typo the exact same way here, or I need to fix this. If I change this, then I need to change that. They have to match. Alright, so now that we have that done, if I go to my desktop, I have the hello world file here with the .java, so you can see it's a Java file. If I go to my Launchpad, I can go to terminal, that's what we want. And now I need to do a couple other things. The first thing I need to do is right now I'm in like my home folder, my user folder. I need to go to my desktop. So if I type cd, that's change directory, I can type desktop. Now I'm on my desktop. And I need to be on my desktop because that's where my hello world program is. Now what I need to do is I need to compile this file. So there's different types of languages. Some languages are interpreted, That means that the computer can read the language and run it as it's reading it. And it's like translated into the computer's information, the computer's data and stuff on the fly, like live as it's reading it. But you also have other languages that are compiled. That means that for it to run that program, it has to like translate all of that first into all of its bits and bytes and whatnot, and then it can run it. So Java is a compiled language, so we have to compile it. Now luckily we can do that in the terminal. So to do that, we type Java C, so Java compiler, and hello world dot Java. This has to match exactly what this says, plus the extension, because otherwise it can't find it. So if I typo, like I left off the D, then it can't find it. So Java C, file not found. So let's put the D in world back on there and try it again. And nothing happened, right? In this situation, it's not that nothing happened, it's that it finished doing what it was supposed to do. So if we look back at our desktop, we now have this little coffee cup icon here, and we have a .class file. So it has compiled successfully, and here it is. Here's the compiled version of this Java file. Now if we actually want to run it, what we can do is we can tell the computer Java hello world, and we're still on my desktop, so it's still looking on my desktop. We don't need the .class. Java is going to look for the .class in the location. So if we run this, hello world, there we go. And of course we could change that string to say other things, but there you go, you have completed your first program. Now you might say that, well, that was easy, and that's the point. If you're new to programming, there were quite a few steps here that you may not be familiar with. And the idea of a hello world file is to do something easy, so that way you can understand the steps that are involved and make sure you understand how to run it and all that stuff before you get into complex stuff. So hopefully all that worked out for you. Like I said, if you're on a PC, this is going to go a little bit differently because you don't have terminal, you don't have text edit, but this is how you would do hello world on a Mac using text edit and the terminal.